Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on what side of the pond you're on, and welcome to an extra special edition of Across the Pitch. Today, we bring back the Accrington Stanley Legends series. Although it's not a player that we'll be interviewing, it's an important figure from Accrington Stanley history. My name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm here to introduce my co-hosts, Darren Woodhead and Tony Robinson, who are going to be speaking to the man who really bridged the gap to the current era of Accrington Stanley. He was in charge of things during the time that Ilias Khan took over before Andy Holt came in. That would be none other than Peter Marsden, and we're very excited to have Peter on the show today, because this is just another opportunity for us to fill in a piece of the puzzle of Accrington Stanley's history that we haven't told so far. So without further ado, over to my co-hosts, Darren Woodhead and Tony Robinson. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing well, Phil. It's always a pleasure to be back with you guys again, and really looking forward to today's interview with a gentleman that has been instrumental in Stanley's history. So I'm looking forward to it. It's a big thrill for me, and I'll turn it over to Darren.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for coming on and joining us. I know we've been lining this up for quite a while, so we're really pleased to have you on.
My pleasure. Accrington Stanley is very close to my heart, so I love talking about the club.
Well, you're in the right area, Peter, because that's all we do when the three of us get together. And I've been looking forward to this one particular as well, because the time frame that you were involved in the club, if you want to say, was colorful. It's really a unique time in the history of the club, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you over the next little while and getting some stories on it. So over to you, Darren.
Yeah, so obviously, Peter, you're a gentleman from the south of England. How on earth did you get involved with Accrington Stanley? So what's the story, Peter?
My wife often asks that same question as well.
I bet.
Well, I'm a Londoner, as you can tell by my accent, but my father was from East Lancs. My father was a lot older than my mum, and he died when he was 60, and I was only a year old. But at various times, I think the Marsden family lived around Wisnall, Abbey Village, and a place called Cherry Tree near Blackburn as well.
Yeah, nice area.
And this was hard times. This would have been, my dad would have been born, I think, about 1900, and they were what I would call poor farmers. I think that might be a way of describing it, where they probably had to make ends meet by doing lots of different things. And then my dad came to London at the time of the Wembley exhibition in 1923, and then he ran a coach firm called Venture Coaches, this was the days before people had cars. But growing up, he died when I was 1, so I never really knew my dad, but I was very proud to have Lancs in my blood, and I had lots of uncles and cousins up in Lancashire, and I used to go up and see them once or twice a year. So I've always had an affinity with the area. I think the people are fantastic, much better than the people in the south. I genuinely mean that. And that's my affinity with East Lancs. And then the next stage, I suppose, is how I actually got involved in the club. And what happened was, I was, I suppose, an armchair Accrington supporter, but my nearest club was Watford, and I used to go to Watford regularly. This was particularly during the Graham Taylor era. And it was the first season when Accrington was back in the league. It was the first month of the first season, and they were away at Watford in the Carling Cup. And that was quite an interesting game. It was 0-0. Then it went to extra time, 0-0, penalties. And then Accrington changed the goalkeeper. I think Ian Dunbavin was in goal for the 90 minutes or 120 minutes. Then they changed him over with the keeper they had from Charlton. And then Watford won on penalties. But after the game, I was talking to the Accrington directors, who I was sitting behind, and I told them that I'm a closet Stanley fan. And I said, I'd like to get involved in the club, and I might even put a bit of money into it. And I gave one of the directors my card, which is in the days when people had business cards. I don't think anybody has them anymore. And then what happened was somebody managed to lose my card, I suspect. So really, that should have been it. That should have been the portent saying, don't get involved in Accrington. But I thought I'd give it another go. And then a bit later, I had to go up to Lancashire in business. And I turned up at the Crown Grounds, the first time I've ever been there. And this was on a Friday. I always remember that the place was desolate, the shop was shut. And I managed to get hold of somebody, eventually opened the shop for me. And all I had was 20 quid on me. And I bought a book that I really couldn't put down. It was called The Club That Wouldn't Die by Phil Whalley. No relation to Eric. And I also had enough money to buy the first programme from the home game. And I read this book and I just couldn't put it down. It was all about the club's struggle to invent itself, after they went out the league in 62. And it was such a hard graft with all the fans getting involved in rebuilding the club, rebuilding the ground. I just couldn't put this book down. And then I sent a letter to Eric Whalley, again saying, if you like, I'll get involved. And then a bit later, he rang me and he said, are you some sort of nutter? And he said, why do you want to put money into Accrington Stanley? And I said, well, I like the place. And then I met all the guys at Wycombe Wanderers, a couple of weeks later. And then that was the start of my Accrington journey.
As the book you bought, you said The Club That Wouldn't Die. Did you happen to buy any of Darren's books? Or
that was a lot better than anything I did.
I've got Darren's. I think it's your A to Z. I've got that on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
I think you're both Nobel Prize winning authors. So I wouldn't.
Oh yeah.
There you go. There you go.
No, I know that Phil Whalley's book. It was excellent. The Club That Wouldn't Die. Yeah, it really was. So anyone really, it's difficult to get hold of a copy of that, but if anybody does, any of the new supporters, I would recommend it definitely.
Yeah. That book cost me an awful lot of money, I tell you.
Yeah, more than 20 quid, wasn't it, Peter?
You can multiply that by a few notes on the end.
Yeah. Oh dear.
One of the things that I was reading when I was getting ready for the show, and I was reading some of the notes, and I'm just interested if you could tell us about how the Ian Craney deal led to your financial involvement in the club, and then the impact of Eric Whalley retiring and David O'Neill becoming chairman. Can you shed some light on that?
Okay, so the what happened the first season, I was just sort of bedded in as a director, but everyone was very nice to me, but I was like the new guy. I didn't really want to throw my weight around. And then the next season, I always remember it was in the Crown Pub. Everyone used to go to the Crown Pub after games, that they probably still do. And there was Eric and John Coleman. And I suppose it was after a few pints of bitter that I can't remember which of them, but they said, we want to get Ian Craney back from Swansea, because they told him a little bit previously. And if we get Ian Craney back, the club can do all sorts of motoring up the league. So I was talked into buying him back for £50,000, which I think I must have been mad, but that was it. And then Eric said, if you do that, I'll make you vice chairman. And I think I got 10% of the club for that as a shareholding. But that was a little bit of a teaser to get me into the club, and that's when that's my first start of having to bankroll the club. That one.
Yeah, obviously difficult times, weren't they? I know Eric was doing his best, and but just tell us a little bit about when Eric had to move on and David O'Neill getting involved as chairman. I might be jumping ahead a little bit.
No. But Eric, I got on pretty well with Eric, but he was a typical, like, in the past, he would have been like the local mill owner whose word was God. I always got on the right side of Eric, but a lot of people didn't. He would never really tell you what was going on at the club, and I think everyone was a little bit too afraid to delve too deeply. And then I think it was about the third season I was there, Eric decided to call time. And then David O'Neill, who really was a figure out of nowhere, then became involved as chairman. And I don't think David had really done any due diligence about the issues at the club, which in fairness, I don't think really anybody had, because Eric kept things so close to his chest. But after probably a few weeks of getting involved, he realised there's this massive figure owed to HMRC. I can't remember the exact figure. I think it was about 300,000 off the top of my head. And it was all further muddied at that time because it was never quite clear whether the deal with David taking Eric's shares had actually happened. Was the deal completely cemented? It was all very, very muddy and murky. But in any event, there was this big tax bill that had to pay. David, was a nice enough guy, but he didn't have the means to do it. They went to the fans in terms of the SOS to raise some money, and I think it raised about 100k. But the club was still 250,000 short, and it was obvious the money wouldn't come in. And at that time, a supporter of the club who was based in the south, but Accrington born and bred, Ilyas Khan, who made his money as a merchant banker in the Far East, was publicly saying, I'll pay the tax bill, but I need to get involved in the club. There needs to be greater transparency. Things have got to be done differently. And then the next stage was I met Ilyas.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult now where we are in League One to go back and, really relay just the difficult times there were. I mean, I remember just for the week or two up until the going to court and things like that. Literally, you went to bed not knowing if there would be a football club in the morning when you woke up. It had got to that point, hadn't it, Peter, really?
Yeah. And I thought to myself, I've only been involved at this club for 4 years. I like all the people involved, but what is going on? It seemed like the existing directors were almost sleepwalking, hoping that it was all going to sort itself out. And it was obvious it wasn't. And I felt I was the only person out there who could read the writing on the wall and knew something had to be done about it, right? And that's when I reached out to Ilyas. I met him in London, and then the rest, as they say, is history. We got on pretty well. I tried, when I came back, I tried to get the other directors to see the sense of bringing Ilyas on board, which to my mind was as plain as the nose on your face that you should do it.
Yeah.
And the guy was really proud to be from Accrington, and he had the money, everything. It was a no-brainer to do it. But a lot of these people who I do regard as my friends, and even now I regard them as my friends, just didn't really want to do it. I think they were so set in their ways. I'm not saying this in a nasty way, but they were just so used to doing things in a certain way that I tried to get them to do it. We had a game. This was at the height of the SOS campaign. We had a game at Chesterfield at their old ground of Saltergate. And after the match, I spoke to all the directors. I even brought my solicitor along to sort of tell them of their obligations as directors of the club, that they had a duty to the club's creditors and the fans to do something about it. And when you've got a guy saying, I've got the money to save it, and you're saying, well, I don't really want your money, you can't do that. Not only from the supporters' point of view, but from a business point of view. So I said to them, you've got to do it. Nobody would go along with me, so I resigned. And then a little bit later, the wheels well and truly came off because the court case was getting nearer and nearer. The club had run out of money. And I sided with Ilyas. I met all his supporters, and all decent people, got on with them all. But the funny thing is I got on with the old brigade as well. So I found myself getting on with everybody, but I was the only one who was trying to reach out.
You could describe yourself as the Peacemaker, I guess, right?
I am the Peacemaker. That's absolutely my history in the role of Accrington Stanley is I'm the Peacemaker. I'm also the Kingmaker. I shouldn't have been the king, but I'm the Kingmaker and the Peacemaker. All right, that's my part of the proceedings.
Well, I do remember. I mean, I did contribute in that SOS campaign because, like you, I wanted to help the club. I obviously didn't have the resources, but one of the things I remember is I got a share of the club with that, and also the shirt had the serial number on it. Was SOS, and my serial number is 010. So I still have that. I still have that shirt in my wardrobe, and quite proud that I got involved. But it was, as you said, there was so much money owed that I felt like I was just sort of dropping a cup of water in a bathtub. It didn't, but I guess every little bit helped.
Absolutely. And to my mind, when I read that book, The Club That Wouldn't Die, all the blood, sweat and tears people are putting to get the club back where it was. And Eric, I know Eric had his faults, but he worked bloody hard to get the club back in the league. And to my mind, we just couldn't let it go. So many people, people like John Domain, I know you interviewed him at Spoken, but so many people were involved in getting the club back that, we had to carry on with it. And Elias Khan was
thankfully, sense prevailed, didn't it?
There was people crying their eyes out. They were sleeping in the Crown Ground overnight, thinking they'd never be able to see a game there. It was absolutely, it was touching and it was pitiful,
Well, I'm really enjoying this conversation so far and hearing about the history of the club and the football and the business end of things. But as we always do during our interviews, we have a brief interruption for what is by far my favorite segment of the show. This is where we ask some fun questions, not necessarily related to football. Sometimes there'll be some North England versus South England, pop culture, movies, music. Well, I'm just going to turn it over to Tony Robinson for the world famous rapid fire.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil. It actually did start out as North versus South, so I've dusted off a few of the old questions because we've got Peter on and as I say, couldnn't be more suited for North versus South. So let's start off with the old, true and tested ones. Do you prefer mushy or garden peas?
Mushy.
Red or brown sauce on your bacon sandwich?
Always brown sauce.
Would you have black pudding with your full English? Yes or no?
I don't like black pudding.
Oh, Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Beatles.
This one we haven't asked for a while, Phil, is Coronation Street or EastEnders?
Coronation Street every day of the week.
Tell us, you've got a new hobby that you've developed during COVID. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, I've since I stopped going to games on a Saturday, when it was largely due to COVID, I thought I'd better do something else with my time. When I was much younger, I was quite a keen artist, painting, and I hadn't picked up a brush in about 30 odd years, and I started doing that again because my wife kept saying to me, why don't you start painting again? And I got utterly absorbed into it, and I find it very therapeutic, and dare I say it, I'm actually getting maybe half decent at it.
I've seen some of your work and I like it. I think your colors that you use are so vivid and just pop out at you. So I think you're on the right track. And
any Stanley related paintings, Peter?
That would be one of the next ones. I might even paint you guys if you like.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. My wife likes me painting, but it's usually skating boards and things like that. Sorry, go ahead.
Peter, could you name two people that you would like to have dinner with, dead or alive?
Dead or alive, that would be probably one that would be Paul Gauguin, the painter. I love his work. And the other one, probably Peter Sellers. I'm a bit of a Peter Sellers fanatic. I like his films.
Oh, yeah. Pete Panthers are just, he's tremendous in those films. Your favorite takeaway?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know. I like eating. Basically, there's nothing I won't eat. Probably Chinese, but I like everything.
We're going to test this part of it. We're going to test your knowledge of North American lingo. Obviously, there's different words in the North America that mean different things in England. First of all, we just had one. I'm going to give you the British word, and can you tell me the American version? Takeaway. What's the American version?
Oh, I got no idea. Takeout. I got no idea.
Yep, that's it. Takeout.
Yeah.
Yep. And a British they call it a CV in North America.
No idea.
A resume. And yeah. I'll give you the North American
I
version.
actually saw an article the other day. I'll have to find it, but I saw an article that said that a CV and a resume technically aren't the same thing. I'll have to find that.
Well, for this rapid fire, it is the same thing, Phil. So
Well, I was just wanted to throw in an interesting future link that we put out on Twitter or something.
Next thing you're going to talk about Coke Zero again or something.
I remember being in the States once, and I tried to make some money.
In North America, we call this a flashlight. What do they call it in England?
A flashlight, torch.
Yep, very good. And what's your preference after a match? If you were in the lounge, would it be, if you were to go into the new lounge now, would you have Aki Ale, a lager, or a glass of wine?
I'd always have beer.
Good man.
Actually, I wouldn't say no to wine either, but I would normally have a beer.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That's great, Phil, Peter, and back over to Darren.
Yeah, so let's get
great stuff.
You've made me feel thirsty now for a beer.
Yeah, well, it's nearly weekend, Peter, isn't it? We can have a beer or a glass of wine. So yeah, let's get it back to the football. So obviously you got involved. Ilias is bedded in as chairman, and then you start, rebuilding the club, and you end up as a stint as chairman. How did that all come about, Peter?
Well, before that, when Ilias took control, it was him. I was his effective number 2. I was called the president. Dave O'Neill was the MD because he was the man on the spot. And I think Peter Short, who again was a bit of a diplomat type figure, he was involved on the board as well. And I think Ilias was involved for about 3 years off the top of my head. As you know, paid all the debts. He did some ground improvements. I know there's a lot of work done on the pitch. And basically, the club's in, without setting the world alight, we were in pretty good shape financially. John Coleman was doing his usual thing. I think John Coleman is the best manager in non-league football, but everyone knows that anyway. And then we were doing okay. Then in his, I think Ilias' third year, I think it was, John Coleman decided that by that time the club, the year before, the club almost got promoted. Remember, we reached the playoffs and we lost to Stevenage. And
Stevenage,
that's it. Those bastards, right?
I know, yeah. I've never got over it. Yeah.
Me neither. Cost me some money. Anyway.
And then what happened? A lot of the players got their heads turned by other clubs, thinking that Accrington's got a good squad, and their players can go for still not bad amounts of money, but not as much as maybe it would cost to buy some other clubs. So several of our players went. Got half decent money for most of the match, in fairness. But I think John was hacked off that his squad that he got put together had, fragmented. The next season, it was a bit like after the Lord Mayor's show, when we were we started off quite well, but I think we sort of ended up about mid-table-ish, or we were heading for mid-table. And I think he was a bit sore that, he was a great manager and Accrington wasn't, if you like, living up to his expectations of what he could do with it. So he got his head turned to go to Rochdale, who were at the bottom of League One, or the old third division, whatever you call it in those days. He couldn't keep Rochdale up, but I think he had a good check at it. And during that, I think he left about 2/3 of the way through the season. And then Paul Cook came in as manager. And then at the end of that season, Ilias thought to himself, look, I've got so many business interests in London. I've done my bit. I've saved the club, but with the best will in the world, there's maybe somebody else can do something with it because I just haven't got the time. He had the money, but he hadn't got the time to do anything with it. Right? I think he was hoping somebody might come forward to want to buy the club, but nothing like that happened. So I said to him, if I can get a group of people involved, would you be interested in myself running it? Right? And that's what I did. I got, that season, I think we probably had one of the biggest board of directors in the Football League. I think I had about 10, 12 people involved in it. And I cajoled everyone to put some money into it. And that board was the mixture of some of the old directors, some of the what I called Ilias's, friends from the SOS campaign, some people I knew from London. We had an Accrington supporter from down in Brazil who ran the Copacabana Hotel in Rio. So we had a good spread of people, and we all put money together. And we took it we took it from Ilias, but Ilias was still the major shareholding, but we were the day-to-day people running the club. And I think we all went into the spirit that Accrington Stanley wasn't just a football club, it was a national institution. I always compare Accrington Stanley, then it might be different now, but I used to compare it to the National Trust, and we're like the trustees keeping this great organisation going. And that's what we wanted, just to keep the club going,
Yeah, I mean, and you did a great job. There's no doubt in that, and thanks for that. I mean, that was, and I know when Paul Cook took over, you had a little bit of a role to play in a little partnership that evolved around that time, didn't you?
Yeah, that was quite funny actually, because when he became manager, which was about 3/4 of the way through the season when Ilias went at the end of it, we knew Paul was going to be the right guy, and John Coleman actually almost suggested that Paul would be a worthy successor. And I still talk, even when John was at Watchdale, I used to talk to him regularly. And everybody at the club said that Paul Cook's a good, exactly the perfect choice. But Paul wanted to bring in his number 2 from Sligo. I don't know who the person was. But at the time, Liam had been a caretaker manager, I think, after John had gone. And we regarded Liam as a really good club man. And I think Liam might have wanted the job, and I think we possibly looked at giving Liam the job, but it might have been a stage too early in his career. So I think it's mainly down to me. I said to Paul that you can only have the job if you take Liam as your assistant manager, which didn't really please Paul, and I don't think it really pleased Liam because he wanted the job. So they I gave them each other's numbers. They met, I think, at a motorway service station, something like that. And in that brief conversation, they decided that they could work together and to give it a go. And after that, they formed one of the most famous management duos in English football, which took him.
Strange, isn't it, how things work out? Yeah.
Well,
and that was all down to yours truly.
And I think the one time, just jump in for a second, one time that Paul Cook didn't really have success is Liam wasn't his number 2 at Ipswich. To make your point, so that's it shows how a good team they were. So
so you've been a peacemaker and a matchmaker.
I know, and Liam is doing wonders at Wigan on his own.
He is.
I think Liam got overlooked a little bit because he's a nice guy. He's quite how can I put it? He's quite laid back. He's not as maybe as in your face in a nice way as maybe like a Paul Cook. But Liam's a great thinker of the game. He's very astute, and it's proved.
Yeah, definitely. So while we're talking about ex-managers, and there's another figure just a little bit later on who divides opinion at Accrington. And I think he gets a bit of bad press actually myself, and it doesn't go down well because I sometimes defend him. But I think anybody who manages Accrington Stanley has earned the stripes. It's not an easy club to manage, is it? So go on, tell us about James Peter.
Well, he came to obviously see out his playing career at Accrington. He was a friend of Liam. I think they played together in Blackburn's youth team. That's how they knew each other. And then when Liam decided to go, to go and join Paul Cook at Chesterfield, we needed a new manager. And again, it was the end of the season. And I started talking to James Beattie, and I realised he was actually quite proud of the club. He's anybody who disrespected the club and all that. He was very, very anti people doing that because he took the club really seriously. Which, when you think the guy played for England and had a great career, and that made me think, well, God, fair play to you. Your heart's in the right place and you mean it. So I offered him the job. I think he was surprised to get it at first, but he then did it. His first season, it started off disastrous. I think we'd gone about 12 games and probably only got about 3 points, something like that. But then he managed to turn it around quite spectacularly, and we sort of winning more games than we lost. And we finished the season mid-table, which after the start we had was quite an achievement. The next season, again, we started off badly. By that time, John Coleman then suddenly became available. And I'm normally quite a mild sort of person, but I thought, no, we need to do something about this to bring John Coleman back to the club. And that's what happened. So, we parted company with James. But, he did a lot of good at the club. I can't really say anything bad about James Beattie, actually.
Well, when you look at your time, Peter, with the club, and not only off the field, but you were overseeing that period where, for that 2 years, there was, obviously a few changes in the management team. And so when people look back at Stanley, they look at Stanley as a club that gives people a chance. And obviously with John and Jimmy coming back and having 20 years in total with the club, you don't sort of think of a club of having a sort of a period where there was a change in managers.
Yeah.
Was that a hard period of time for you during that spell?
Yeah, it was a tough baptism for me as chairman, because Ilias, the money man, I wouldn't say had gone completely, but because he's still a major shareholder, but he was concentrating on his other things. Like I said, Coleman, I get on really well with John, but I think he just had enough. I think he thought he's not being, why wasn't he being recognised in the game as somebody who goes to greater things, which is why he left the club. But I also think, I talked to John even when he went to Rochdale. I think as soon as he went to Rochdale, I think he realised he made a mistake. He was so much a part of the Accrington journey, and it's in your blood. You can't, even when you want to get it out of your blood, you can't. It's just so much a part of your DNA, and that's why John knew he had to come back.
And after when he came back, and then as time moved forward, it was getting that time where, in 2015, 2016, Andy Holt came into the picture. How can you walk us through his first involvement and how we came to take over?
Well, I think he almost came looking for us, because he's obviously a local business person. And I think he was doing a bit of sponsorship. But Andy is a person who likes a challenge, as indeed I think every chairman of Accrington Stanley through time memorial likes a challenge. And I just think he thought to himself, I can do something with this. And he probably, like I said, he's a local businessman, he's very successful. And I think he just fancied it as something that he could do something with, make it better, and have a bit of fun with, And in fairness to Andy, he's put his money where his mouth is, and he's done all sorts of things. The ground's looking great, and he's taken the club to another level.
So that it was at a time then that were you looking to get out, or you thought the timing was right and it just sort of worked well with?
That's a good question, because by then I'd been chairman, I think, for 4 years, or 3 or 4, I can't remember. And it was quite tough going. I always managed to turn it around. I'm quite a resilient character. I can always find the money needed to do something. So the club was always mid-table, maybe lower mid-table. We were never threatened with relegation. We were always a bit unlucky. We never had a cup run. We sold the odd player. But it was just a bit tough. I would just say here and now that there's a lot of rubbish that I hear that, the club was about to go bust. That would have been over my dead body, that would have happened. But it was obvious that to take the club from a bit of a hand-to-mouth existence to one which, could be in full bloom, somebody with extra resources, extra money would be needed, and that person was Andy.
Yeah, so, just looking back on John Coleman and Jimmy Bell, and they celebrated 20 years in 2 spells. Just give us some thoughts on those 2 guys and what they've achieved, Peter. It is remarkable, really, isn't it?
Fantastic, and I never tire of John and Jimmy's company. They make me laugh. They're like, I think they're football geniuses, and they're really clever people. I think John is he used to be a school teacher. I think he's a clever guy, and I've seen him with the players, and he, I used to go in the change room sometimes after the game and stuff like that, and he could either give some of the players a real bollocking, so they were like slightly in awe and fear of him, but he would know when to wrap his arm around them. He would know when to be the joker, and I think the players absolutely loved him.
Yeah, I think we had Jimmy on as a guest, and I think something that resonated with me that he said that they know who to build up and who to knock down. So, different characters and how to mould that into a team, and they certainly do it, don't they?
Yeah, and the team spirit was fantastic, particularly during those early years, which I remember most. And, I know it probably wasn't the done thing, but if we'd done well, we used to probably be at an away game, there'd be a few beers after the game. We'd be the last people to leave the ground, Yeah. And some of these clubs, they couldn't believe it. They thought, you non-league upstarts, you shouldn't be behaving like this. But John knew how to, if you like, get that esprit de corps, is that the word? From the non-league days, and still build it into a league football outfit.
Yeah, if you haven't got the financial muscle and, that some of these big clubs in the lower divisions, you've just got to use what's at your disposal, haven't you? And he certainly knew how to harness that team spirit, didn't he?
Yeah, he still does. I mean, John...
Yeah, he still does.
He's got, I think, a little black book of particularly every footballer who's ever come out of Merseyside and Lancs in general. I think he's football mad, even when he's not watching Accrington. I think he just wants to watch football. But God knows how his wife puts up with him, because he's the original footballaholic,
Especially when we lose. I don't know how Mrs. Coleman goes on those Saturday evenings, but there you go.
Well,
you can give him a complete new team every year, and he would weld it into a really good outfit.
It reminds me when we did an interview, it was just after COVID was starting, and we were able to get John Coleman on, and what we thought was going to be a 45-minute chat, because he just loved to talk football, ended up being 2.5 hours. And he was just a terrific person. He just loved to talk football.
Yeah. And with John, what you see is what you get.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to just sort of ask was, is there a certain anything that we haven't touched on that you would consider a highlight of your time at Stanley?
Yeah, there was a few things. There was from a personal point of view, are you talking about?
Well, from whatever you think was just made you feel that was a real highlight of your time with the club.
Well, I can remember some funny moments, and they're the ones that stand out. So I can remember, for instance, that I used to be quite friendly with Ian Dunbab, the goalkeeper. And I remember that one year he wanted us to go on a pre-season. I think it was somewhere like Mallorca or Gran Canaria, which normally we'd have the money to do it, but I think we were looking at one year. And he kept saying that his mates, what's the Liverpool guy?
Stephen Gerrard.
Stephen used to say, my friend Stephen's organising a golf tournament. And he used to act as like Stephen Gerrard's unofficial minder. And he rang me up one day, and for some reason he's in an airport, and he said, "Hi, Chairman, I've got Stephen Gerrard here. He wants to speak to you." And I thought, that's Ian Dunbavin taking the mickey again. So I said, "Ian, look, F off." Right? And he said, "No, it really is Stephen Gerrard." And I started talking, and I've got no idea whether I was actually talking to Stephen Gerrard or just Ian Dunbavin pretending to be Stephen Gerrard. And that was one thing. I can remember another thing that made me laugh was actually this: when James Beattie went, the players needed calming down a bit, and there was one game. I think Liam was the caretaker manager, and we won that. And I thought I'd better speak to the players, put them at rest and stuff like that. So the game had finished. The players were winding down up and down the pitch. So I thought everyone had left the ground. So I jumped over the perimeter wall, and I was the centre circle talking to them, and we had a bit of a laugh in the centre of the pitch. And then remember the next day I think it was like the Sun or something like that, there was a half-page picture of me surrounded by all the players, and it was taken by, Kipax, the photographer.
Yeah.
And I thought that was quite funny. But like little things, Accrington, it was like, okay, he had a few tears, but he had an awful lot of laughs there as well.
Yeah, I think, like you said, there's something happens every time you go to a match, isn't there, at Accrington? It's just one of those kind of places. And now, when you did move on, you got involved with another football club, didn't you? A little bit closer to home, Peter. So how did that work out with Wealdstone?
Well, what happened was that Andy then became, obviously the majority shareholder, and I stayed on. He wanted me to stay on as chairman, which I did to the end of that season. I think he still wanted me to stay on the next season, but I felt uncomfortable because Andrew's the guy putting the money into it. He should be the guy being the chairman, calling all the shots, and I felt I was really in danger of being a bit of a like a bit part player. I don't think Andy wanted me to, but like your pride gets the better of you, and I think no, I don't. I've had everyone has their sell-by date, and I thought I'd reached mine. So I then got involved at Wealdstone, which was very close to me, and that club had a history a bit like Accrington. That was like probably the biggest non-league club in the country in about the 80s, and they sold the ground. They went down about 5 or 6 divisions. Eventually, they were coming back, and they needed a new chairman, so I got involved there. And it was a bit of a funny situation because at Accrington, I'd been about 7 or 8 years at the club before I became chairman, and everybody knew me and they thought I was a steady pair of hands. But at Wealdstone, I think nobody quite knew what to make of me. And, I got the club, we got the manager there, been there for about 30 years. And he's a very nice guy, but he needed to be replaced. Again, everyone has their sell-by date, I think. And I think that hacked off some of the directors and some of the supporters. I brought a new manager in. We got to the semi-finals of the FA Trophy. But I think there was a little bit of ill feeling towards me because they felt I was, like the new guy, and I changed the manager. So in the end, we parted company. And really, that was the end of my footballing odyssey after that. And then COVID happened.
And now you're a painter.
Yeah. Yeah.
A painter, peacemaker, a painter, peacemaker, and a matchmaker. That's you've got to. You can redo your resume or your CV with all that on it. One thing I wanted to ask Peter is, and this is just sort of looking, down the road a ways. I mean, obviously, we've got Andy Holt there now, and John and Jimmy are still there, and. Can you see another promotion in the near future with John and Jimmy?
It wouldn't surprise me because we could be like a Wickham or somebody like that who goes up for that. I don't think we could necessarily keep our own in the Championship, but I think we're capable of having a flirtation and maybe a brief foray into that. The problem at Accrington is that it's just the gates. Accrington is a small place. You've got Blackburn and Burnley down the road. And even when you make the ground nice and you do make the football better, you've still got a ceiling of how many people will come into the ground. And I just don't think we've got the gates to ever be anything other than a club that's really, League One, League Two.
Yeah. I think if, like you said, if they go up, they'd certainly give it the best, and it wouldn't be for lack of effort if they didn't stay up. No. Just the last thing for me is who would you see leaving first, the club, John or Jimmy or Andy Holt?
Sure, that's a difficult question.
Well, I just thought I'd wrap up with an easy one.
I'm not going to answer that. No, that is a really tough question. That is who do you think is going to leave first?
Oh, I think Andy, because I think Andy, because I think John and Jimmy will stick around to try and get one more promotion. But they could end up both all leaving at the same time because of the way they talk. And I mean, Andy said he wanted to be in for about 10 years, and he's got 5 or 6 in now. So he's got hopefully a few more years he'll stick around. But again, it's a tough one to answer, but I always thought which will come first, so we'll see.
Yeah, well, you see, being Accrington is quite an Accrington chairman. It's quite a debilitating experience. It's a very enjoyable experience, but it takes its toll out of you. It's both financially and your time, and it depends what sort of person you are, but I think most people have only got a certain lifespan that they can do it before it just wears them out completely.
Yeah, I get that, and I think maybe it's a bit of a game changer now that Andy's put so much into the ground, and he's got his family going with him, his son and stuff. So he might just want to go on a little bit longer than he would have done, when he made those comments about 10 years. So. You'll never know. You don't know. It gets under your skin. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, Andy doesn't like being beaten, which is a great attribute to having the chairman. And I think he likes to moan a little bit, but deep down he's having a lot of fun doing it. So I think he's going to be there for a few more years, whatever happens. And I think John Coleman would be there for a few more years. In answer to that tough question I was given, I think both of them will be still there for quite a while.
Yeah,
good. Yeah, I agree. Well, that's a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Now, obviously, thanks for joining us tonight, Peter. We really enjoyed every minute of that chat. It's been fantastic. And I know we've spoke about you coming and joining me and coming to a game before the end of the season, hopefully, and you'll be able to have a look at all the new facilities, etc.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll do that. But you can't get Accrington Stanley out of your blood. Once you're involved in it, it's so addictive. More than any other club in the country. It's because it isn't just a football club. It's got so much history attached to it. The supporters are a different type of person. It's like I say, it should be something like the National Trust. It's that important.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't put it better myself. Well said.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you can just. Yeah, Phil can wrap this up because he knows what it's all about from thousands of miles away, just getting the bug.
Exactly what I was going to say is that for thousands of miles away, that's really what got me into the club. Is just all of that history of the club that it would never die, and then just learning piece by piece, it only gets more interesting. And then like I said at the beginning of the show, just the fact that all of us are here and able to talk about Accrington Stanley here in 2022. There's hundreds of people that have at some point along the way put their stamp on the club, and we wouldn't be here today if that person hadn't been there at that time. And you certainly are one of those people that it's just a massive part of the reason that we're even here and able to talk about Accrington Stanley today. So I want to first thank you for that, and of course thank you for your time on the show with us today, because I've really just enjoyed sitting back and getting to listen to this amazing discussion.
Well, I feel privileged that I was part of the most fascinating and turbulent up and down period in Accrington's recent history.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see your painting of Darren Woodhead.
Not me, at the Crown Ground. Oh, you don't want one of me. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I mean, on that note. A nude one. No, definitely not.
No.
Nobody wants to see that. I mean, going back to football and Stanley and how people want to know the story. I mean, we get a download of countries that have listened to this podcast even, and we only talk about Accrington Stanley, and I've got to be honest, some of the countries on there I have to Google to see exactly where they are, and exactly, it's unbelievable the amount of people who are interested in Accrington Stanley Football Club.
Yeah, I think we just sort of person as well.
I don't know if it's somebody on the holidays, but the last couple of weeks we had some downloads in Cayman Islands. So maybe somebody was taking some money out to, or putting some money in Cayman Islands. I don't know, but
that might be Ilias.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it wasn't me anyway.
Oh, good stuff. No, thank you, Peter, for joining us.
We always, one thing we do always finish up with is an on Stanley on. So if everybody's ready, on three, here we go. 1, 2, 3. On Stanley on.
Stanley on.
Peter, thank you.
Cheers, Peter.
Cheers, Peter.
See you guys.
Cheers,
have a good time. Yeah.
Bye. Have a great one, guys.